Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Janet Gallimore, the Executive Director and State Historic Preservation Officer for the Idaho State Historical Society. We preserve and promote Idaho's history, and I'm delighted to be here this morning with Justice Meyer to talk a little bit about her story and why she has left such an amazing legacy to our state. And I appreciate the opportunity to work with you and share your story with your colleagues and with the public. To provide some context for the folks who are going to learn more about you, tell us a little bit about your family, and then follow up with that about your early career and how that might have brought you to where you are today.
Certainly. Well, I am married to Rick, and we have 4 children. They're spaced very far apart in age. Jeremy, the oldest, is in Seattle. He's in his late 40s. The youngest is Matthew in Coeur d'Alene, who is 25, and in between we have Chris and Erica. I met Rick in Salt Lake City. I had gone to law school there and started my practice there, even though I'm from Idaho. And Rick had the 2 older boys, and then we had the 2 of our own. So I spent several years in Salt Lake City practicing law. And then in the early 2000s, Rick and I decided to just up and move our family to North Idaho. And we started a boat rental business on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene and did that for several years. And during the long off seasons, which is basically the school year, I taught at NIC. I taught paralegal classes and business law. And then a few years later, got back into the practice of law in Coeur d'Alene. I did that for about almost 6 years before I went on the bench. I was a trial judge in the 1st District in Kootenai County in Coeur d'Alene for 8.5 years before I was appointed to the Idaho Supreme Court, where I've been for the last 1.5 years.
Well, I'm so proud of you for realizing this amazing award, the Distinguished Jurist Award. So let's talk a little bit about your most memorable career achievement or accomplishments, and how did that have an impact on you, and how has it shaped the community in Idaho?
There was a case that was very interesting. It was a case that grew out of another case. So there was underlying litigation and then the case that I was involved in. And the litigation went on for about a year, as cases do, before it went to trial. And it was a trial in front of a judge. I was across from 3 attorneys who represented 2 different clients. And all of the 11 witnesses in the case were attorneys. And I hadn't been practicing in Coeur d'Alene for very long. And, you know, just to pause here, one of the things that was interesting to me in changing states and going from practicing in one state to another is that you don't take your reputation with you. And so for some people, maybe that's good, but I had a good reputation and I had become fairly well known, and you know, I did good work as a trial attorney, but no one knew that in northern Idaho or in the rest of the state for that matter. And I didn't know a lot of attorneys. I was a civil attorney. We don't go to court all that often. And so I was just getting to know people. Well, during the trial, and I went first in that case, at the end of my case, one of the attorneys, local attorneys across from me came over and told me what a great job I was doing. And I thought, wow, that's nice, you know, because that isn't usually something that happens in the middle of a case. And he did the same thing at the end of the case. And the 2 local attorneys were quite well known, very well respected, not just in that area, but statewide, a bit older than I was. And I wasn't as worried about the results simply because I thought the law and the facts were on our side. And in the end, we did prevail, and again, very good for the client. But the case felt like it changed the trajectory of my career. These 2 other attorneys talked about me in the community very positively, brought me into other things like the Idaho Trial Skills Academy. And they were just very gracious in, including me and getting me involved in different things. 2 years later, I was on the bench. I don't think that's coincidental. I think that those connections make a big difference in people's lives. And so that case will always stand out to me as one that was very important in my career.
So tell us if you have any entertaining stories or memorable stories about law school or your early years of practice, or highlights that highlight the values that you have stated already about professionalism and goodwill in the legal field.
When we were leading up to trial, I was working in my office one evening, and an email came through, and it was from one of the attorneys, and it had a chain of emails attached to it. But I realized that I wasn't the intended recipient, even though the email came just to me. The intended recipient were the attorney's co-counsel in the case. And the string of emails was talking about the frustration that the other two were having in trying to get to some kind of settlement with my client. And the one attorney who sent the email to me, unintentionally I believe, used some pretty salty language and told them what they should do to my side. And so when I read that email and realized the mix-up that he had, I thought about it. I was a little offended and thought about the sternly worded email that I could send back, and thought, well, that's not going to do a lot of good. And but I needed to let him know that he sent the email to me. So finally I thought of a one-word response and sent back a reply that said nothing but charming. And you know, we bonded over that. We've talked about it over the years. It just, in that strange way, I think brought us closer, and those two local attorneys, I would say, are friends. You know, that's something that is definitely goodwill that comes out of a case.
You are one of 5 women Supreme Court justices ever in the history of the state of Idaho. So if you could reflect a little bit about what does that mean for a legacy for your work, and how do you feel that helps to either inspire or somehow give confidence to young girls who might be interested in the law, or interested and really thinking about what they think they're going to do in their life, and how your leadership sets the standard for that?
You mentioned one of 5 women ever on the Idaho Supreme Court, and that's out of 60 justices. I am the 60th who was appointed. It's such an honor to be on the court, and things have changed so much in the last few years in terms of women ascending to the bench. When I first started practicing law in Coeur d'Alene, I'd been a lawyer, you know, for over 20 years, and I looked around the state. At the time, there were no women on the Supreme Court. There had been 2. And I look around now, and you know, I can speak most closely to the First District, because that's where I spent so many years. Now, when women, and for the past few years, when women are appointed to the bench, it's not even discussed as, oh, a woman got this position. It was, oh, so-and-so got this position. It's not even discussed as a male-female thing at all, which I think shows tremendous progress. It is, who is the best person for this position at this time based on the applicant pool that we had. So for young women, for girls who are thinking about what they might want to do in the future, they don't just look around and see what might be possible. What they're seeing now is what is. And that is incredibly gratifying to me. It almost brings tears to my eyes, because it has been such a change, and it's been a long time coming, and yet it seems to have exploded in some ways in recent years.
I love that. I'm so inspired, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to talk with you. I'm so proud of you for achieving this Most Distinguished Jurist Award. And thank you for helping people find trust in our institutions, and especially in the rule of law, because it affects everyone. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much.